Another wonderful day, another fine day. We get together and we have conversations. We get together and we talk. We get together and we talk uh, to people who are making things happen in our communities. We get together and we talk to people who care about our community. People who want to see the world become a better place, a fine place for everyone. Today is going to be a sister, and then a brother is going to join. And trust me, it's going to be a wonderful conversation. Boss, welcome to Towide.
Thank you, boss.
How is everything?
I can't complain.
It's 2025. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you too. Yeah,
For those who are watching, you want to share the link. You want to share whether it's the YouTube or the Facebook link. Please, if you have your questions, comment section. But guess what? You know me very well. You guys know me. Any question that's not related to what we're talking about here today, you will be ignored. Let's take advantage of the persons we have on the platform to educate our community, to educate others, to share information that can get us to a place that is far more better than we are today. I'll bring in our brother, and then maybe my sister will take the conversation from there. Boss, welcome.
Hello to everybody. Nice to be on
Ah,
here.
Hey, Jack, welcome. So
Hey, so nice to see you.
it's nice seeing you. To our viewers, so today, again, I have a former visa officer here with us. It's going to be a conversation on how to best prepare to have a successful visa application. You know, there is a growing number of coaching businesses, consulting businesses. I myself have one. And then what we do is that we help um, students who are trying to come, not only students, but also people who are trying to come visit the US or coming either on student visa for study or as a visitor. We're trying to put together best packages while getting them admission letter from school and all that. But we can go further if we don't get the visa. And we observe that visa applications sometimes are very complex, depending on whether you are applying from, depending from the local consulate and all that. So today I have a former visa officer with me. He's going to be sharing his experiences and also the knowledge and insight on how to best prepare for a US visa. Jack, welcome to Toride.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Yeah. So Jacques, do you mind sharing with our viewer, the U.S. consulate that you have been to? I know you worked for 9 years across, all over the places in the world, and then you retire, and now you have your own business and you're a coach for visa interview. So can you share with your viewer where you were and what was the favorite place?
Yeah, that's right. So for 9 years, I worked for the U.S. Department of State, who's in charge of visa processing overseas. I had a little bit of unusual career path because I did do 4 normal long tours, which were Mexico, Argentina, Pakistan, and India. But then I also had the opportunity to take 2 years where I was very quickly traveling from region to region, spending only 1 to 2 months in a place at a time. And during that time period, I visited about 12 other embassies and consulates around the world. So I've been in just about every region. My favorite was probably Cuba, just because, Americans can't usually go to Cuba. It's not allowed. So it was a great opportunity to experience that country in a very an unusual time, shortly after the embassy had been evacuated. I had a great time there.
oh.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So, and can you share about your experiences as a visa officer?
Yeah, you bet. So about for the first, I'd say 5 years or so, I was called a line officer. So I was the one, behind the sheet of glass, interviewing about 120 visa applicants every morning, day in and day
Hmm.
out. And then in the second half of my career, I kind of moved up to being the supervisor of those line officers, and then sometimes even the supervisor of a section. So I retired in 2020 during the pandemic, and since then I've been coaching people on how to pass the U.S. Visa interview through my website, visainterviewcoach.com.
Wow.
Yes. So, speaking about passing the US visa interview, wow, a lot of rejection from the US consulate, abroad, especially those in Africa. Again, this live stream is not only for African, it's for anyone applying to US visa. And but mostly I will back up with my data, and that's why will be maybe a lot of questions that will be asked will be towards Africans because
Ah,
my business I coach a lot of African. So
sure.
Jack, can you share with me why do we see a lot of rejection, from African applicant?
Yeah, it's interesting. Refusal rates really vary country to country. And if you had to look for kind of trends on why that happens, we usually look at overstay rates. So we're always keeping track of the visas that we issue, of those people, how many of them go and use the visa well and come back, and then how many
Hmm.
of them go and overstay their visa. And the Department of State, has a goal. They like that number of people who stay past their visa period to be under 2%. So if a country is kind of under 2%, everything's okay. You can even try raising your approval rates a little bit to test the waters and see how that works out. But if that overstay rate goes above 2%, then you're going to start feeling some pressure from the Department of State saying, hey, you guys need a plan here to bring either your refusal rates up or better able to target the populations that are misusing their visas and overstaying their visas. So basically, the higher the overstay rate, usually the higher you'll see refusal rates go. And sometimes there will be like a conflict zone where overstay rates spike just because people want to get out of a very dangerous situation. And shortly after that, you might see like refusal rates rising along with that to kind of compensate for that.
Okay, let me get back on that overstaying. Uh, how do you guys measure that overstay? Because I know with the US visa, right, when you get your degree, you have chances of applying for OPT and
Yeah.
work for a number of years before returning back to your country. And within those years that you are allowed to legally stay here and work, you can get sponsorship either to a company, H-1B,
Mhm.
and part of the green card. Would that be considered as an overstay?
No. Yes, you're right. A student visa is technically a temporary non-immigrant visa. However, if you go for 4 years of a bachelor's and then 2 years of a master's and do 3 years of STEM OPT and then get an H-1B and stay for 7 years and then go home, technically you've never overstayed. Overstaying is like when you finish your coursework, there's no OPT opportunity for you, and you just stay in the United States. It's more commonly, calculated with tourist visas because it's a lot easier to do, but with students, it's the same idea.
Okay. So, and how important is to, have family here? Because the data show that usually when you say that you mentioned during your visa interview that you have family member in the US that might have overstayed, it could be a deal breaker. So how unfair, is sometimes for to those students who are coming here because they
Yeah.
might not be the one directly related to the family. But when they mention having a family member, they think that mentioning that will strengthen the application by showing you guys that they will be actually be having people that will guide them through this complex U.S. educational system. But instead of using that as a strength, you guys are actually taking that as a weakness and deny visa. Can you elaborate more on that? And why is that? And how we can better avoid prepare for a better outcome.
Yeah, great question. So I would say sometimes having family in the United States is helpful, sometimes it's neutral, and sometimes it can be harmful. So it could be helpful, for example, if you're applying for a tourist visa and you've never traveled overseas before. If you tell me you're going to go to New York for your first overseas trip, I'm going to start getting a little nervous because it would probably be more normal to visit some countries in the region or maybe in Europe before going to the United States, right? But if you have an aunt in the United States who you want to visit, suddenly your purpose of travel makes sense, and that could be a positive point for you, right? Likewise, with a student, let's say you have a very wealthy aunt in the United States who's a computer scientist working at Google and is going to pay for all of your education, and that's your only source of funds, that could be a positive point for you. Now, looking to like neutral cases, it might be, a cousin who went 20 years ago on the diversity visa. They work, as a chef in a hospital or something. That's probably a neutral case, especially if they live in a different state than what you're going to. Coming to the times when it could be a negative point, we're looking at family members who have misused their visas, who have claimed asylum in the United States. Obviously, asylum is a legal process, But if a visa officer believes that a person's true intention is to not go make this, temporary non-immigrant trip as a student or a tourist, then they have to refuse that visa. And they're always kind of trying to figure out patterns, either what you've done in the past or what your family members have done. And I know a lot of you are going to say like, hey, that was my mother or my brother or my cousin. Don't, blame me for something that they did. But visa officers are looking for patterns, and it's true that there is kind of an increased likelihood that you might abuse a visa if a close family member did the same thing.
Well, not fair, but I understand the
Yeah,
rationale.
I know. Yeah.
Let's hold back, and we're going to cycle back to this later on. But let me come back to the U.S. student visa. What are the common weaknesses that you observe as a former U.S., when you were on duty?
Yeah. So this all kind of comes down to the fact that there are a lot of people who are applying for a student visa, not because they want to go study, but because they want to go work in the United States or reunite with a family member. And the visa officer doesn't know who they are, right? They're definitely there, but they have to figure out in just those couple of minutes, are you the real kind of student or are you the fake kind of student? And so that's what these questions are designed to do, is kind of separate the two. So for example, if you're applying toward a community college or an English language program, that's fine. You can definitely qualify for a visa doing that. But unfortunately, that's also what the fake students apply to do, because it's easy to get into, it's inexpensive, and it doesn't take a lot of work having to take the GRE or the SAT, right? So even if you're a legitimate student, if you look like a fake one, then you have to kind of work extra hard to prove that you're making a smart plan. So a great example is the community college. Like if I ask you, why are you going to community college? And you tell me like, oh, it was the cheapest opportunity and somebody told me to go there, I'm going to have some worries here. However, if you tell me, well, actually, I want to go to this really great 4-year school and there's a relationship between the community college and this 4-year program, and this is a great way for me to save about $25,000, but also graduate with a 4-year degree from a quality program, that's starting to make more sense. And like you've actually thought this through and care about your education, which is the key. Other weaknesses, of course, would be like memorizing answers. This is not like a job interview where you can kind of anticipate the questions, then come up with these beautiful sounding answers, and everybody's going to say, oh, yes, that sounds great. This is more like a lie detector test. And after doing tens of thousands of these officers actually do get pretty good at just sensing whether you're being open and authentic with them, or if you're just repeating things that you read on the internet or that you practiced beforehand. So that would be a definite red flag. Another thing is money. I mean, I'm sorry to say it, but that's an important point of this. It's in our regulations that we have to make sure you have liquid assets enough for the first year and that you have the ability to pay for future years. And everybody usually has the liquid assets for the first year because you have to show it to your university as well to get the I-20, right? But it's the convincing them that you could pay for 3 more years of a program that might cost $40,000 per year, where we come into some problems. And that's why it's so important to know everything about your sponsor's finances. I know maybe sometimes families don't like to share the details of their income and their savings and their property assets. But for this visa interview, you have to make sure that that applicant has all of that information.
Okay. Let me speak about...
You have something else. You have something else? You wanted to say something else?
I could go on and on. I could talk about visas, all day and all night.
Yeah, it's good.
Okay.
So I wanted to ask the question, or just some clarification about the money part, right?
Yeah.
I witnessed or I noticed that when visa applicants, especially from African countries, are saying that the aunt or uncle is the sponsor, is not well perceived, by U.S. consulate. And the reason being, I was a student visa myself for many years. So I know I've been in those consulates for, I don't know, 10 years. So watching those questions over and over, I guess I can say I'm pretty much an expert. But the point is, in Africa, we have our culture. And we have a culture, our value, and it's common in our culture for my aunt or my cousin or my uncle to take care of me, especially if he adopted me when I was younger. And most of the time, if they have, if he or she is a wealthy man, you can actually pay for my education abroad. But what I've noticed, though, it's not just in Africa, in some other countries as well, is that I know in the US, right, family is limited to mom, dad, and the children. But
Yeah.
in Africa, that's not the case. We
Yeah.
have uncles who can sponsor your education up to 4 years without even blinking an eye. But in those cases, we see a lot of rejection. Why is that?
Mhm.
I thought you guys are prepared to understand the culture in which you are. So can you speak more on that?
Yeah, sure. I think part of it is cultural bias. You're right. Like in our culture, if my uncle was going to drop $200,000 on my education, everybody I know would be kind of surprised by that. It's not a common thing. I lived in Niger for 2 years. I lived in India for a while. It's the same kind of situation where there's the idea of the joint family or the extended family, and everybody kind of looks out for each other. And that's one of the reasons that the State Department, I think, sends their officers overseas to do these interviews. They could be doing it by video chat here or just do a document review, but they're hoping that by having the officer live in that culture for a while, they can eventually understand some of these deeper issues and get beyond it. But you're right. I think we carry our cultural bias with us, and it might take some time for us to realize that. So, especially with newer officers who don't know that that's how family structures are organized in that culture, they could be more likely to deny if it's not an immediate family member paying.
Right. And how to strengthen such application after being denied so many times. So what would be
Yeah.
the best either preparation or how to fill out that DS 160 to make sure that at least it's going to give you a try, to answer and it will give you the reason why your uncle is willing to pay for your education.
Yeah. I would say my tip would be don't make the officer ask you, why is your uncle willing to do this for you? That might seem very obvious to you because it's your culture, but it might not be obvious to them. So tell them. So, for example, if I say to you, who is your sponsor? Answer the question immediately and say, it's my uncle, but then also maybe give some context of why that makes sense for you all. For example, oh, who's your sponsor? Answer, yeah, actually, it's my uncle. He's very wealthy. He owns three cement factories, and he's always kind of paid for my education ever since I was a little kid. So he offered to pay for my bachelor's degree as well. So
Mm.
adding that extra context tells the why this makes sense, and that's what an officer is looking for.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Let me come back to that. What you mentioned. I mean, I'm kind of quoting you here. Kind of like the cheaper way to get in, whether it's to a language program or a community college. So in general, again, we see a lot of rejection coming from those um, applicants
Yeah.
that coming either to go straight to community college or language center. However, in countries like Cameroon, Gabon, Chad, and our neighbors, we do speak French and English for some of the country, but so usually, there's a thought process going on that is better, right, to come study English in the United States because it offers many advantages, right? You are in that environment and you will learn fast. You will have
Mhm.
the resources, the teaching method, and all those kind of things. Sometimes it's better to come here and pay a little bit extra to study English than stay in your home country and start studying English because again, guarantee you as an English learner, there is so much gap once you get here. So I would say though that language center are not necessarily the cheap path to come here. But I noticed that in French speaking country, language center, I consider like, oh no, you just applied. There was no due process. And I do understand that there's no quite a due process to go, to get approved or to get admitted in a language center, compared to maybe Stanford, MIT
Yeah.
bachelor program. But how do we make sure that with my admission, my I-20 from US renowned language center, I will get that chance to explain myself why I'm choosing to study English. I mean, starting by studying English in the US before I proceed with my bachelor. How did I make sure that I will get that across to the US visa officer in front of me and make sure that you will approve my visa?
Yeah, I think the key to your question you just asked is the word why. These officers are always looking for stories that make sense, which is why they ask a lot of why questions. And so you better have your motivations and your thought processes down before you going into that interview. So, for example, yeah, so maybe your country has French as a first language. The officer's wondering, one, well, maybe you could go study English in Nigeria, or maybe you could go do it in the UK, or maybe you could do online video classes with you in the United States from video chat. All of those might be much less expensive options for you. So you better have good reasons about why you're choosing it to do it in the United States rather than one of those alternatives. And the
Hmm.
second thing is connecting this to where you're trying to go in life because this is a big investment of time and money for you. You know, if you're spending several tens of thousands of dollars and months of your life to improve your English, the officer's going to want to know where do you expect that investment to pay off for you in the future? You know, unless you're like the child of a Saudi prince who just is swimming in money and wants to improve your English skills, you better have a good reason about where this is going to pay off in the future. Like, I want to open up a software engineering company, and the majority of my clients are going to be from English-speaking countries. So I really need to improve my English, especially my technical English, so that I can, you know, interact with them in my work. There needs to be some kind of connection that makes sense to your future plans.
I mean, it does make sense what you're saying, but most of the time, I don't think this is my own opinion. Okay, you can disagree with that. I don't think that applicants are given much chance to go into detail. Usually they get the chance to just be asked one question and that's it. So, but we we are not going to argue about that. I know that depends
You
of
don't have to, because
the
I agree with
local
you. Yeah.
consulate. Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
No, I was just gonna say I agree with you. You're right. The interview is incredibly fast. They don't ask the questions you want them to ask. They interrupt you before you finish your answer. So there's a huge, you know, weakness to this process, unfortunately. There are some tricks, though, to where you can kind of sneak information into the visa officer's head. And one of those
Yeah.
places would be in your DS 160 visa application. If it's your first time applying, you know, you don't have a lot of opportunity. It would basically just be in your job description. But you can write the whole story there. I know it says in the application, briefly describe your job duties, but the officer does not care that you go to meetings and that you know, have to go on sales calls. They don't care about those little things. They want to know the big picture of where you are. And you can use
Mm-hmm.
that space to tell the whole story, such as I have been a software engineer for the largest software firm in Cameroon for the last 3 years. I'm looking to go and open up my own business. I found that there's a lot of opportunity if I had my clients from English speaking countries. However, my technical English abilities aren't strong enough. So I want to go do an English class to beef them up over the next 3 months. So I use that paragraph to explain your whole life story. And the officer reads that when they're scanning through your application. And then that information is already in their head without them having to ask you any.
Okay. Well, it's good to know. I was told that some of those DS-160s are not being read until the candidate is in front of you. So I know it might be true. That's what we found on the internet. But let me ask you: do you guys have a certain number of visa that is already said that will be approved, regardless whether you are a good applicant or not? Is it a quota?
Absolutely not. There's no quota. There's kind of like a natural balance where you can see your refusal rate as an officer, and you can also see the refusal rate of all the other officers. And so if yours starts to get way higher than the average or way lower than the average, you might start to think like, oh man, maybe I'm doing something wrong here and kind of move closer to that average. But there's nothing coming down from the top that's like, you must deny 20% of people today. I promise you, each case is kind of evaluated on its own merits. As for the DS-160, you're right. Nobody, almost never will somebody review your DS-160 before you walk up to that window and they scan the barcode. That's the first time.
Okay. So let's come back, and then we're gonna take a 3 minute break. Um, in terms of application to US university, what are the chances of getting your visa approved when you're going to a low rank school? Again, you didn't
Yeah,
get a chance to have all maybe your standardized tests or GRE, GMAT, um, LSAT, and those kind of things. So the strategy sometimes is to apply for low level school. Once you are in the US, you have more resources to study for those standardized tests, and also you also sometimes have better connection, and you can actually leverage the one semester that you spend at the low level school to ask for a recommendation letter to apply to a better school. But what are the chances of getting approved to low visa school? Because it seems like, when you have a good admission to a top school, top notch school, you will automatically get approved. And those who have, been approved to low level school have left behind. So it has to do with a lot of the things. Do visa officer understand that sometimes it's not obvious, right, to get all the required document on time to those top the university, and low level university, why sometimes are more flexible because they're trying to get the they're trying to raise the effective, increase the effective at the school, and also kind of thing. So sometimes they are sometimes flexible with the documentation that they require, and sometimes they're waiving document, right? They're trying to see pass beyond all the document. If you have your transcript, or what we call in French relevé de note, and you have a few letter of recommendation, and also you definitely will have to have proof of English, and that's it for most part. They will not require you the GRE and all that. But sometimes what we see, especially for graduate students, not having a GRE, it kind of a red flag. Can you elaborate more on that? And after that, we're going to take 2 minute break.
Sure. Okay. So anybody with an I-20 can technically be approved of visa. However, universities definitely influence a visa officer's decision making. Because if you got into a school with a low admission rate, meaning like a competitive school, it means that their admissions committee has already reviewed all of your documents, your grades, they interviewed you, and they say, you're a great student, we want you at our school. So when we see that as a visa officer, we already know you're a great student, and we don't have to kind of evaluate that side of things. And then it's really just more about money. Do you have the money to pay for it? If you go to a school that has very high admissions rate, where maybe it's not as competitive, then we have to try to figure out both sides of it. Are you a legitimate student who really intends to study, and do you have the money for it? That's, I think, why the chance is lower for lower quality universities. As for things being, like easier because of the timing of the process or the documentary requirements, that might be another cultural bias thing, because in the United States, we start thinking about universities like the second year of high school. We're taking our practice SAT test. We're trying to figure out what extracurriculars we could do, all so that we're ready in senior year to like get those applications in on time. So it's something we think a lot about. And maybe if we don't see that in an applicant overseas, even though it's a totally different culture, we might be, again, applying our culture on them.
Okay.
Are you a business owner who do not have a website yet, or are you somebody that has a website but do not know how to maintain, how to secure that website? Or are you somebody that has a business idea in mind but do not know where to start, where to go? Well, this video is for you, and you have been missing on a lot of potential clients, a lot of visibility, and many more. Hey, my name is Chanel, and I am the co-founder and COO of MCGNS. We not only build websites for you guys, but we also maintain those websites, redesign those websites. So even if you have a website that needs to be revamped, redesigned, we do that for you. So how about you focusing on growing your business, growing your product, and we do everything for you. If this video is for you, please reach out at www.mcgns.tech, and we will do everything for you. See ya.
Yeah, you're good.
Welcome back, Jack.
Yeah, thanks.
Again, today we are here with a former visa officer, and we are sharing some insight and tip to how to best prepare for your US visa interview. So, Jack, let's speak about money. How likely is to approve a student visa with partial funding, partial scholarship, and that the family still have to cover, the half of the scholarship? But there could be chance that the scholarship will be renewed for the remaining of the year. Let's say for a 4 years program, and the scholarship will be renewed. Depending of the student performance. How do you see such cases? And have you ever denied, someone with a partial funding? Because I've seen people with partial funding being denied. Why is the rationale behind it? The denial.
Yeah, well, a lot of these decisions are subjective. Like, do I think you're a real student? But when it comes to money, our regulations are pretty clear. We have to verify, like I said, that you have liquid assets for the first year and you have the ability to pay for future years. So partial funding goes a great distance towards fulfilling that requirement. And it also shows that the university likes you and thinks you're a good student, which is helpful as well. However, the visa officer still has to verify that you can cover the remainder. And when you're talking about covering the remainder, the best, strongest point is your sponsor's income, because income tells an officer how much that sponsor is going to be making over time in the second and third and fourth year of your education, as well as what kinds of savings they might have that you could assume they would have based on the income they have. So if your income of your sponsor isn't a strong point for you, then you want to kind of shift down to whatever the second strongest point would be. That might be their title. For example, if they're like a judge, even though they don't make a lot of money, if you just say they're a judge, an officer might assume they make a lot of money. Or if they have a lot of property assets because they're in agriculture, maybe even though they don't make a lot of money, they can sell some of their land to pay for it. Whatever the strongest point is, you kind of want to focus on that.
Okay. How important is administration? How important administration, presidential administration, play a role in U.S. visa either approval or denial, especially for students?
Yeah. And I just want to remind everybody, like, I have not worked for the government in 4 years. These are just my thoughts as an ex-visa officer on how I see things. I don't represent the government or anything. But I was in the State Department when Trump came into office the first time. And, it wasn't as much of an effect as you might think. There was, of course, the ban on 7 countries saying nobody from those countries can come into the United States. That was one very obvious thing. But other than that, I think it was just kind of an increased pressure, like I talked about before, on countries that had high overstay rates, asking for specific plans on how this consulate in this country intends to lower the overstay rate for that country. But I would say beyond that, there's not as much change as you might think.
Okay. And that apply to all countries, whether they're in Africa or not. And how, sometimes I could see that there are some biases, that is up to the U.S. consulate or the one you have in front of you, that you going for your interview. How would you recommend what do you recommend as a former visa officer to applicant? Because I know a lot will be watching, or a lot are watching right now, to go back again for a second try, because it could be so discouraging when
I
you're
know.
getting your visa denied the first time and you think that the world will end there. But I usually recommend my mentee not to give up, because I know people who got the visa approved. I think that was maybe the fourth time. So how do you see applicants that come back for another try?
Yeah, great question. I had a client once who was approved on the 9th time. Not that that's
Oh
normal,
God.
it happens. The idea is, first of all, you have to kind of figure out what happened in the first interview to decide whether to reapply again immediately or not. So in the first interview, if there were a lot of positive points about you that didn't come up, that's a great opportunity to apply again, because you have new information to give that second officer that would help the second officer to make a different decision than the first officer, right? If there's
Mhm.
nothing new to tell them, then you have to just hope that the second officer sees the same situation in a different way than the first officer, and the chances of that happening are a lot less. It still happens, but it's less. And then if everything came out the first time, and maybe something really bad happened, like they discovered you were not being totally honest about something, it's probably not a good idea to apply again, because these interviews are all about trust. And if that trust is broken, then no officer is going to approve you for at least several years.
Okay. Could you share with our viewer two instances of the visa that you deny and then, or were denied and then they came back and you have to approve because you saw the situation different? Can you go?
Oh
What
yeah.
was
No.
What was the visa denied the first time, and what do you see in the application that made you, give them the chance?
Oh, well, this happens all the time. It's very, very common. And, some consulates are actually more strict about it. And if a second officer wants to approve, say within 6 months of a denial, they have to go talk to a manager. That's a
Okay.
local policy and it's not everywhere. But for example, a lot of times you would see the notes from the first officer saying something like, the father is a farmer. I don't think they can pay for this education. And then you talk to the applicant on the second try a little bit further, and then you realize, oh wow, this family has, like $1 million worth of agricultural land. It just was miscommunicated in the first time.
Yeah.
So that would be one example of how new information could cause a different decision the second time.
And how do you translate that new information into your GS 160? Because I know there is a spot where you say, have you ever been granted a US visa, and you say no, they say explain.
Yeah.
How do what will you tell viewer to write down there in order to get that second attention from the hopefully it will be a different visa officer?
It has to be a different visa officer. That's the good thing. An officer is not supposed to deny you 2 times in a row. Now, if there's no other officers, it's a very tiny consulate, then they have to do it again. But otherwise, they should always pass you to someone else who can give you a fresh perspective. So that's good. But you're right. That paragraph on the DS 160 is the most important change I think you can make on your second application. And it's your opportunity to just kind of list all the positive things about your case that the first officer didn't know. I had a high GPA. I went to the best university in my country. My uncle, is the CEO of a company that has 170 employees. Just start listing good things about yourself, because if the officer has that new information, then they feel really comfortable to say, oh, the last officer maybe didn't see this this information that I now have, and I can feel comfortable changing the decision of the first officer. Now, what do you put in that? I know it's kind of hard. I know exactly what to put in it because I've been doing this for a lot of years, but you kind of just want to anticipate, like, what are the questions if you had a 20-minute interview, which never happens, right, in the window, and they got to ask you every question they wanted to ask you, and they knew your whole story, and then take all of those most important points and kind of distill them down into a short paragraph. That paragraph has to be, no more than 5 lines long or 6 lines long, or they're not even going to bother reading it. But if you do it right, then suddenly they have the answers. They have the answers to the interview questions in their head before they even start talking to you. And that's why that's such a powerful technique.
Okay. So Jack, I know you are very effective in writing that paragraph of explanation. We worked on a case before, and the insight that you provided were very helpful. So I will give you a case now. I will give you a case. One of my students that was denied, and I want you
Okay.
to kind of, be in that shoe or the officer who denied the visa, and tell me why. I have a
Okay.
student, very, very, very smart guy, very young too. And for me, there was no doubt that he would get the visa. 21 years old, already got 2 master's degree in Cameroon, right? Applied get here to get this, a master that would have led to a PhD program. But unfortunately, because again, French-speaking country, you have to go to a language center. Well, he has a good sponsor, but he was denied the visa. So, according to you, what would have been the thought process of that officer who denied my student the visa?
Yeah. Well, a third master's actually looks really bad because it looks like you're not making progress in your life. These officers kind of want to see you going bachelor's, master's, PhD. And if somebody's stuck at the same master's phase, they're wondering, do you really want this education because you've already done a master's, or are you just doing this, because you want to do OPT or get an H-1B? And I'm not saying this is the case with your student at all, of course, but this is what it looks like to a visa officer unless they have the full story. And then the second thing is the English language program. I'm not sure what your student's I-20 looked like, but a lot of times they just list the English language program. And a visa officer doesn't understand the whole story of how that's going to transition them as a bridge program into the PhD program. And then the third thing would be money. Maybe their PhD will be fully funded. We would hope so. But if that's not on the I-20, then a visa officer doesn't consider it to be a sure thing. So that I would just encourage everybody, if you're offered any kind of scholarship, don't think like a letter from the university is enough to take to your interview. You want to make sure that it's on your I-20, because if they see it there, then they know it's going to happen.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that making sure that, because some you're right, some I-20, some school is just right, okay, funded by the school or funded by the family. So is it important to put the specific amount break it down by family and school? That give a little bit, inside information to the visa officer?
Yeah, if they see, scholarship or school funded, and then that amount, they know that that is a guaranteed payment source for the student.
Okay. Another case, as you said, we're not going back and forth. What can that student, will have done different? Again, it was not coming for a third master, but most computer science, I'm going into specific now. Computer science is, it's an umbrella, has a lot of, sub field that you could do. So his intent was to come here and do artificial intelligence. He has done computer science before in Cameroon, but he wanted to go into artificial intelligence especially. And then there are not PhD program, and I'm not as far as know, or so far there are some few PhD program, but you sometimes have to go to the master program, in those top school, because again, those are new program. They try and know and all that. We are not going to talk about that. You know how new program are being launched in school, and is how it goes. So what do you think? Because I want him to try a second time, right? And I know you are no longer a visa officer, but how can he approach that different?
Yeah, well, he has a complicated story, and these visa interviews are so quick, they don't handle complicated stories well, right? So this is a perfect example of when you can write everything in the DS-160, both about why it makes sense for him to do a third master's, also why the English program is necessary, also what he plans to do after. So for example, that paragraph might sound like, uh, I think I got denied because I'd already done a master's before. However, that master's was about, Python and whatever, C++. Now I'm focusing on artificial intelligence, which I have no background in. And I've been, offered a PhD position, assuming that I finish my master's with XYZ school and XYZ professor who I've already done some research with or whatever. I need to do a 3-month English language program in order to get my technical language skills up to par according to the university. So I'll be doing that first. So like use that paragraph to tell the whole 3-point complicated story.
Okay. Since we are on different major and the topic of different major, how do you look of the choice of the major
Yeah,
when you have
I
an
like
applicant applying for, let's say, a bachelor in computer science versus one applying for a bachelor in art? How do you evaluate those two candidates? Let me be
yeah,
specific.
yeah,
An African candidate, two
yeah,
African candidate, one
yeah.
applying for a computer science degree and the other one applying for art or music or I don't know, something that I would say to my people that is not relevant, for Africa. But how do you see that? Because in my thought process, if I was to be a visa officer, I will analyze the return on investment on that child. Right? As a parent, I want to make sure that if I invest so much money, but we're talking about a minimum of 25,000 a year times 4,
Yeah.
that's about 100,000, for the course of 4 years. I will advise my child to go for computer science because I can have a sense of security that after that we get a job, and in fact again Africa culture come back and help his lead brothers and sister or cousin. So as a visa officer, how do you guys evaluate two applicants applying for the same bachelor but with different major?
Yeah, good question. So technically, according to our regulations, we're not supposed to consider the opportunities that the student will have in their home country with that kind of degree. So for example, if there's a student who's studying, nuclear physics, I'm not supposed to think, well, there's no nuclear physics program in your country. How are you ever going to use that, right? That's no. subconsciously, I think visa officers are thinking about those things because they're always looking, like I said, for stories that make sense. So if you tell me, oh, I want to study, nuclear physics, and then I'm going to come back and work in my family restaurant, that's just a story that's not really going to make sense for me. Coming back to the computer science versus the art, if you can pay for it, on art programs, no problem. But like you said, they are thinking also about the cultural context here. And they're thinking, well, what did your parents say about you studying art? And if they can tell a good story, like, yes, my parents are fabulously wealthy, they've always supported me in this, they love that I'm doing this, and I believe that, yeah, I'll issue a visa for an art program, no problem.
Okay, that it doesn't seem like it, but
I
thank you
know,
for
I know.
it doesn't, it's hard to believe. It's very hard to believe, but yeah. All
Yeah.
right. So, speaking on let's go back to the art program. Um, how important, you know, uh, visa applicant knowing, again, I'm talking about undergrad student here. He's 17, just got accepted to a US
Can we
school.
take a question from online?
Yeah, after this.
Okay.
He's 17, just got accepted to a US school to study art. He's very, let's say, not passionate. They're all passionate about something, when they are young until they change it. But I think he's very passionate about that. And how would that student be able to, translate that passion to the visa officer?
Yes. This is such a good question. So I love that you use the word passionate because so often, like for us, when we pick a university in the United States, we put so much work into researching it and figuring out that perfect school because we know we're going to be spending a lot of money there and spending 4 years of our lives there. So when we interview an applicant and they're going to, like some random small community college in Kansas, we're wondering why. How did you find this school? Why do you want to go there rather than any of the other random community colleges in the United States? And what we're looking for is passion. So if they say to me like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, my cousin went to this school. They had such a good time there." Like I would always check their Instagram. They're having such a good time. They're back now working in XYZ industry here in my country. If you have a good story and you can show me that you're excited about your school and your program, that's
Mhm.
the key. Rather than listing things from the website like, "Oh, why did you pick this community college?" Answer, "Oh, this community college was founded in 1897 and they have a 13-to-1 student ratio." Like that's not passion. And it's obvious you don't actually care about those things. So you have to show that you're passionate about your school and your program.
Very classy. We're going to take a question from the online folks.
Sure.
Yeah, so his question is, does it make a difference if the sponsor is in the US or in Cameroon? So somebody probably who is in Africa and they
Yeah.
have the sponsor either in Cameroon, probably in the US or in Cameroon. Does it make any difference to the visa officer?
Right. Well, visa officers, I think, always have a preference for the sponsor being your immediate family. Like I said, that's probably a little bit of cultural bias. But if it's someone in the United States, it could be okay. They're looking at three things. One is, how did that person immigrate? Right? Because they want to see if you're going to follow a pattern of legal immigration. They're going to ask, what is that person's job? Because they're worried, like if they run, a Cameroonian restaurant, they want you to come work as a waiter in the restaurant. And then they want to know, where are they? So is it near your school? If it's near your school, are you going to live with them? That could be okay, but they just kind of want to know that situation. So be prepared to talk about those things. And if your family member in the United States, is very wealthy and could afford your education without even blinking an eye, whereas your family in your home country couldn't, then yeah, it can make sense.
What are the question, my parents? No, that's good. You can go ahead.
Okay. I like the fact that you mentioned about family in the US. Um, because it could be a challenge or it could be a dilemma to whether mention that you have family here because you're not too sure whether you just that would be automatic deny or mentioning that your sponsor is coming from another country but not US. I think there's a lot of fear saying that you have family in the US. But thank you for mentioning that. I wanted to talk about the school choice and distraction. So you have a 17-year-old just got in his what we call baccalaureate, right? It's a high school diploma in the US. Baccalaureate, and the mom or dad, the family is trying to send him to Los Angeles. A good school, UCLA, my favorite.
Okay.
In my mind, I'm pretty sure that's what other people think. We know LA is a big, big state with great school. There is no denial, but how unlikely that child will succeed in LA if he doesn't have a family member? So will you be or will you advise? I know now that you're no longer working as a visa officer, you're doing coaching. What would be your advice to a child or a family, trying to take an admission to UCLA for young children with little to no supervision, Los Angeles or small college somewhere in Missouri or Arkansas?
I think, like I keep saying, these officers want a story that makes sense. I wouldn't want my 17-year-old to go off to a foreign country where they know nobody. And if I did know somebody in that country, I would want my child to be near them. So I think that's a totally normal thing to do. And even you can even stay with a relative, who lives near the school, and that can be okay. It's just the officer wants to know the situation, and they're going to be looking for red flags like the immigration history, possible reasons why the family member might want you there to like work for a family business. So be prepared to talk about those things so the officer has all the information they need and they won't assume the worst.
Mhm. Another question?
No.
So, for example, we're talking about the random community college in Kansas. If you say to me, "Oh, student teacher ratio," and it was founded in 1897, of course that doesn't make any sense. But if you say to me, "Oh, my aunt, she got an H-1B visa and she works for Amazon, cloud services in that city, so it's perfect. I can live kind of near her. She's 2 hours away, so I can go there on the weekends to visit her." Something like that. It makes sense why you would choose that school because you want to be near your aunt, and everything kind of fits together for the first time rather than feeling like you're just telling me things from the internet.
Think for the internet. Okay. So do you guys ever evaluate the social, integration when you're interviewing a student?
You
Social
mean like check?
integration in general. In general.
I don't know what that means.
Like, would the applicant in front of you be able to the integration will be smooth into the US?
No,
Do you
I don't
evaluate
think we.
such kind of things, or
No, I don't think
it's not
so.
something that you consider?
We do want to feel that you can be successful academically. That is an important point to verify, but not, I think, like your ability to fit in socially. No.
But in order to be successful academically, you need to be also successful socially, right?
That's a good point. I guess I've never even really thought about that. Maybe they should add a fourth criteria.
Okay, because I know that those are the metrics that sometimes I'm using to, kind of guide students
Hmm.
where would be best to apply for, education. You want to send them where they will have less, distraction, especially at a certain age. So I thought that was something that you guys would consider when evaluating an applicant.
No, but we love personal reasons for why you're doing what you're doing. So, for example, if you say to me, "Oh, I got into Iowa State, and then I also got into Oregon State, and I decided to go with Oregon because Iowa State's like a huge party school, and that is not my scene." Like, "Oh, I haven't heard that reason ever." So, yeah, that seems like it's personal to you and it's true, so I can trust you.
Okay.
I was going to ask you, is there like any additional background checks you guys do when someone applies, or is just based off of the information they provide you with?
I can't talk about background checks. I don't think it's something the student visa applicants really have to worry about. It mostly is just about the I-20, the DS-160, and the interview questions. That's what they can focus on.
Okay. And what about for now? We are switching gear here. I know we are about 10 minutes left. Is that correct? The time?
7
7 minutes. Okay. So let me squeeze a question let me think about my visitor visa folks. Let them not kill me.
Sure.
So what are some of the weaknesses that you've seen in those applications for
Yeah.
visitor, beside the fact that, United States is your first country that you ever visit? What are some of the
Yeah.
weaknesses you can share with the viewer?
Well, you notice how when we were talking about students, I never brought up ties. That's because that's a
Right.
common myth. Student visa applicants don't need to show ties to their home country. They're too young. They don't have any, right? Now, coming to tourists, it's a different story. Now we're going to talk about your ties. So, for most people, the strongest tie is going to be their work and their income because all of visa rules and policy is about protecting American jobs And so if an officer thinks that somebody's going to go to the United States to work without authorization, they should deny that visa. That's why they're looking at, do you have a job that you would want to leave to go work in the United States? Or do you have a job that you like and is providing well for your family in your home country? And that's probably the strongest thing you should focus on. So make sure your job description, like I said, is big picture, focuses on how high up you are in the organization, how long you've been in the organization, and includes your total income. So if you get, allowances or bonuses, or you get extra income from a rental property you have, et cetera, make sure that whole monthly income number is listed, not just your base salary, so that you appear strong with your job and salary. Other ties, of course, are going to be, family members. If you're married, but you're going by yourself for some reason, that's a great tie back to your home country. Having prior travel to countries that have a high wages, like Europe. Then if you had the chance to go to Europe and work there and you didn't do it, you came back, then the officers, again, like I said, looking for patterns, and they're going to assume you probably want to do the same thing and take a short trip to the US.
Okay. Okay. Well, any question?
No other questions.
Okay. So, Jack, you are a very busy man. I don't want.
Okay, let me ask this. One more question. I think he's saying, what if they have a nursing job and just want to visit?
Oh, okay.
Somebody who's a nurse, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. One of the top maybe 5 jobs that people do without authorization in the United States is home healthcare. So if somebody sees if an officer sees a healthcare connection, they might worry a little bit, like, oh, who do you know in the United States who's in the home healthcare industry? Does your aunt own, a home healthcare company? But other than that, I don't see any particular red flag with a nurse going to visit the United States, as long as they're having an income that would support being able to take such a trip.
Okay, I think the next question ties with what I was actually going to ask you. They're asking, will they be denied just because an officer thinks they might want to be RNs in the US? I think my question was going to be, is it possible that an officer can just wake up on a bad day and just decide, you know what, the first 5 people, I'm going to turn down their visa? Is that possible?
I would say it's never conscious. However, we're human beings, and our moods, influence decision making. And they're making 120 of these. So sometimes I think they get decision fatigue. And especially if they're not getting the information they need to make a decision easily, they could just default to saying no if they don't have, their highest level of patience that they could be having in that moment, which is why it's so important to make sure you give them enough information where they can make a decision easily. So if they're asking you questions, like, I'll give you a kind of a classic bad string of questioning. 1, oh, hi, what do you do? Answer, oh, I have a business. Oh, okay, what kind of business? Oh, I work in shoes. Oh, do you have a store? No, I have a factory. Oh, how much money do you make? I make $1,000 a month. And how many workers do you have? I have 17. So I had to ask you 8 questions where you could have given me all that information from the beginning. For example, it would sound like this. Oh, hi, good morning. So what do you do? Answer, yeah, I own a pretty successful shoe company. I've had it for 7 years. I make about $1,000 per month. I have 27 employees. So see how you can kind of give them a ton of information in a short amount of time to give them what they need to make a decision.
Wow. So I think my follow-up question is going to be, is there anything an applicant can do if they notice that, okay, I wasn't treated fairly, this guy did not even give me the chance to ask this guy did not give me the chance to be interviewed. He just saw me and probably did not like me and turned me down. What is the applicant supposed to do besides reapplying?
That's all you can do. But one thing to keep in mind is, let's say you got an officer maybe who's not a very patient person. All of that officer's co-workers know that about him or her, right? So when you show up that second time and you're guaranteed another visa officer, and they see you were refused by George, and they think, oh, George, he's so strict and he has no patience for people, I think they're going to maybe try to give you more of an opportunity because they know that happened to you the first time.
Wow. Go ahead.
All right. Another question?
I don't think so.
All right. So, Jack, thank you so much. I want to be respectful of your time here. You promised 1 hour, you deliver. Thank you so much for all the tips and insight. Again, Where can people find you? I know you have your coaching business. Where can you find you? And is it affordable for Africans? Because right now, let me be honest, care only about my African people. But
Okay.
where can people find you, and is it affordable?
Yeah, so my website has a long and annoying address, which is visainterviewcoach.com. I'm also on Facebook and TikTok and Instagram. My coaching one-on-one sessions are quite expensive. However, I offer a video course. It's 50 videos and about 4 hours worth of content that kind of take you through the whole application process from DS-160 to interviewing, and covers mostly students and tourist applicants, which your viewers may find useful.
Is the website correct? The one on the screen?
That's it. Yeah, thank you so much.
What I can tell is that I used Jack before for some of my private consultation, and you will not be disappointed. Jack, thank you so much, and we shall do that again. Thank you so much, and take care and say hi to the family.
This
Thank
was
you.
so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. It was great talking to you.
Sure.
Can we do this once a month? It was so interesting. Can we do this once a month? At least this was for February, maybe March, and maybe because I feel like when we're going to announce, or more people are going to watch this, they'll really have questions they want to talk to you, and you. Is it possible we can do this once a month?
Yes, I will. Jack, I told you,
This was so informative.
I told you
man.
that this collaboration can be something major. We are building a momentum here, okay? We are building a momentum, and again, Toride, Toride is a platform for Africans. We are building a community here, so we invite whether entrepreneurs, small businesses. We talk about different things that matter to our community, right? So we would love to have you back, right? On Toride show once in a while, as is mentioned. But again, we can work the detail together.
I appreciate that. Nice invitation. Thank you. I had a lot of fun today.
All right.
Thank you,
Jack. Thank you.
Right.
Wow, man, guys, this was so interesting. I think you want to go out there and talk to share the video. By the way, my sister's website is, where did I put that website? Remember Banco. 1 second.
www.aieducationsolution.com. That's the website you look at? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's a website. If you have more questions, or because I know talk down pigeon. Una know very well how it work, right? When you talk to me, it's completely different when you talk to another person. She understands our community, our people. She understands things better, and she's experienced. She's been doing this for a long time. How many years?
A long time.
A long time. So, and I think she can actually help. You want to say anything?
Yes. So, thank you guys for being here. You could have been everyone else, but you decide to, join me and tune in on Toride to listen to this live show. Again, my name is Mihai Sanjo. I'm a CEO and founder of Advanced International Educational Services Consulting, and I mostly, help students navigate, incoming students navigate through this complex U.S. educational system. As I mentioned before, or at the beginning of the video, I do say I have a lot of admission, right? My service, I guarantee you admission to a U.S. university. And depending of your qualification, sometimes, depending on the measure that you are doing, we're going to push for, partial funding, again, depending of what you are doing and what you're trying to study. But we could do all that. And you saw the question I was asking Jack. We can do all that, but one key element, might stop you or getting here, on this eye. So, and that's going to be the visa. So that's why I invited Jack. Why I worked with Jack before. I invited Jack to come share his knowledge, expertise, and insight, giving us tips to how to better prepare to have a successful visa application. My bad. And yeah, so if you have questions, again, Toride, we put my website, and you can also follow me on I have a Facebook page with the company name Advanced International Educational Services LLC. You have a question, go to the website, fill out the contact form. One of my team will reach out to you. Please send us relevant question, because I'm not going to answer what is not relevant, right, to the business. And we do offer one-on-one consultation. We also offer what we call masterclass. We do offer what we call full packages to, we guide you through the process from step 0 to until you go to that visa interview. Again, visit our website. We have a lot of good product. And I hope that, for those who are planning to come study here, or if you're a parent planning to send your child here, you're going to give us a chance to, accompany you through this process. Again, you need to have a experience consulting that knows this, U.S. education system, because the goal is not just sending the child away to go study in the United States. You want to make sure that that child will not only succeed in academy, but will be able to navigate this complex system, right? Through, coaching, being able to connect with other international student, and also be able to do a lot of things in what we offer in the community. Yes, find me on the website, and one of my team will reach out to you, and I'll see you at the top. Thank you, Toride. I wanted to say thank you, and I always say thank you, Toride, and my boss. Thank you for what you're doing for the community, and we are raising leader together. Thank you so much.
Actually, thank you. This information was so good. I'm telling you, I hope our people can really take advantage of things like this. Like my sister said, we are building. We must continue to do what we are doing. Thank you, guys. Visit the website. Yeah.
Welcome to Advanced International Education Solutions, where we're dedicated to empowering students like you to achieve academic excellence and beyond. We offer a wide range of services designed to cater to your educational needs and aspirations. www.aeducationsolution.com. From helping you explore your passions and select the right majors and fields of study, to guiding you through the seamless process of undergraduate and graduate U.S. applications. We understand that finances can be a barrier to education, which is why we specialize in maximizing scholarship opportunities. Our consultation services are personalized to address your specific concerns and provide you with a roadmap to academic success. Language should never be a barrier to education, which is why we offer document translation services to ensure your academic records and documents are accurately translated. Preparing for a visa interview can be daunting, but with our specialized preparation, you can step into your academic journey assured and ready for this crucial step. At AIES Education Solutions, we're not just consultants, we're your partners in achieving academic excellence and realizing your dreams. AIES Education Solutions, where your educational aspirations come to life.